In this video, I'm going to show you how to factor trinomials when a is not 1. Okay, a is the leading coefficient. When a is bigger than 1, a is greater than 1. Okay, so let's look at this example here. 8x squared plus 14x plus 5. Okay, so this is a trinomial. A trinomial is a polynomial of 3 terms. Trinomial is a special name for it, of this polynomial. This is a procedure of how to factor this trinomial. Okay, so step 1 is to find the product of a and c. So you take a times c. Okay, find AC. So a is the coefficient of x squared. So a is 8. And then c is 5. C is the constant. So when you take a times c, well, that's just going to be 8 times 5. Okay, so what is 8 times 5? 8 times 5 is 40. So we're going to write 40 here. So that's step 1. Step 2 is to find the factors of AC whose sum is b. So you have to come up with 2 numbers that when you multiply those 2 numbers, it comes out to 40. But when you add those 2 numbers, it comes out to 14, because your b right here, okay, that is your b, 14. I mean, you can go through a whole process of how to come up with those 2 numbers. Okay, so we can think of what, 1 times 40. 1 times 40 is 40, but when you add 1 plus 40, that's 41. So that's not close to 14. How about we try 10 and 4? So basically what you're doing, you're guessing factors of 40 and then you check it. So guess and check. I mean, if you're lucky, you get it right the first try. So let's try this 2 numbers right here. 10 times 4, we know that's 40. What's 10 plus 4? So 10 plus 4 is 14. Okay, and then our b is 14, so check. All right, so these are the 2 numbers we're gonna work with. 10 and 4. So that's step number 2. Step 3 is to rewrite the trinomial as a polynomial with 4 terms using factors of AC. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go from 3 terms to 4 terms by take out the 14x and replace it with 10x and 4x. Okay, so because 10x plus 4x is 14x, we're not going to change. It's not going to change anything. We're just going from 3 terms to 4 terms, so we can use grouping to try to factor the 4 terms polynomial. So what we're going to do here is we are going to, okay, we're going to bring down the 8x squared. Okay, we're going to replace the 14x with the 10x plus 4x. Okay, that's 14x, and it doesn't matter what order you put this in. You can go 4x plus 10x. It's the same thing. You get the same 2 factors at the end. Okay, and then we're going to bring down the positive 5. So as you can see, okay, you're going from 3 terms, and then it goes down to 4 terms polynomial. Okay, so next thing we have to do is to factor, that's step number 4, factor the polynomial by grouping. So we're going to group the first two terms and then the last two terms. So here we're going to, okay, so here's the first two terms, so that's one group, and then here's the other group, last two terms. Okay, we're going to factor this by taking our greatest common factor. So your greatest common factor is going to be 2x. Okay, and then 2x times what will give us 8x squared, so that's 2x times 4x, 8x squared, and then 2x times what is 10x, that's 2x times 5. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing here, 4x plus 5. Okay, so you need a positive 1 on the outside, and then you're left with 4x plus 5. Okay, so now if you look at this polynomial, it's a binomial. As you can see, the 4x plus 5, as you can see, you have a 4x plus 5 here, and you have a 4x plus 5 here. Okay, those happen to be your common factor. So those are your common factor. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pull those out. So you're going to pull out the 4x plus 5. Okay, 4x plus 5. And then you're left with 2x plus 1. Okay, so the 2x here, and then the plus 1 here. So 2x plus 1. Okay, those are your two factors. Okay, so now if you multiply these two, if you take 4x plus 5 times 2x plus 1, okay, you're going to get back the 8x squared plus 14x plus 5. Let's look at another trinomial. So we have 3x squared minus 11x plus 10. Okay, and then we have to factor this. This is a trinomial where your leading coefficient, the a is bigger than 1. Okay, so we have to factor this. We have a procedure. Our procedure is going to be up here. So first thing we have to do is find the product of a and c. So basically find a times c. What is ac? AC, a is 3, b is negative 11, c is 10. So when you take 3 times 10, you get 30. So your AC is 30. Okay, so that's the number we're going to work with, 30. Okay, so that's step 1. Now step 2 is to find the factors of AC whose sum is b. So find two numbers that when you multiply comes out to positive 30, but when you add those two numbers, okay, when you add those two numbers, it comes out to negative 11, because negative 11 is your b. So let's come up with factors of 30 that when you multiply those two numbers comes out to negative 11. Now let's find factors of 30 that when you multiply the two numbers comes out to negative 11. Now we can go through a big process, but this one's pretty easy. 30, it's not like you have to come up with factors of 500. Okay, so factors of 30. Okay, so factors of 30. We can go negative 10 and negative 3. Well, that's not going to work because when we add up these two numbers, it comes out to negative 13. And we need it to be negative 11. So how about we try negative 6 and negative 5. Okay, so negative 6 times negative 5 is positive 30. But when you take negative 6 plus negative 5, well, that comes out to negative 11. Okay, and that's what we needed. Okay, so these are the two numbers for step number 2. Now, step 3 is to rewrite the trinomial as a polynomial with 4 terms using factors of AC. So what we have to do here is we have to rewrite this polynomial. You have 3 terms, and we're going to change it to 4 terms. Okay, so here's what we have to do. So we're going to keep the 3x squared. We're going to take out negative 11x. Okay, and then we're going to replace that number with negative 6x and negative 5x. Okay, so we can write it out as negative 6x minus 5x, or we can write it out as negative 5x minus 6x. So the order you put it in does not matter. I mean, you're still going to get the same 2 factors at the end. Okay, so what we did, is we took out negative 11x and we replaced that number, that term, with negative 6x minus 5x. So we went from 3 terms to 4 terms, so we can use grouping to factor the polynomial of 4 terms. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to break this polynomial up into 2 groups. So the first 2 will be one group. So this is one group. And then the last 2 will be the other group. Okay. So we have 2 groups. So each group is a binomial. So we're going to factor the binomial by pulling out greatest common factor. So what is the greatest common factor for 3x squared minus 6x? Well, that's just going to be 3x. So we're going to pull out the 3x. So when you pull out 3x, you're left with x, take away 2, because 3x times x is 3x squared. And then 3x times negative 2 is negative 6x. And then here, you need to pull out a negative 5. Okay, so when you pull out negative 5 times what give you negative 5x? So that's just, and then we need a minus, and then negative 5 times what is positive 10, and that's going to be 2. Okay, so we went on and factored each group. Now, this group here, so now you have 2 binomials. So each group, we're going to see if there is a common factor that we can pull out. Well, looks like they both have x minus 2. So you get x minus 2 there, and you get x minus 2 there. So that is the common factor that we're going to pull out. So we pull out x minus 2. And then when you pull out x minus 2, you're left with 3x, because you get the 3x right here. And then minus 5. And then you get the minus 5 right there. Okay. So this right here are factors of the original trinomial. Now, what do you get when you multiply these 2 binomials? Well, when you multiply the 2 binomials, you're going to get the original trinomial, which is the 3x squared minus 11x plus 10. So let's look at 6x squared plus x minus 12. Okay, so we have a trinomial, and the leading coefficient of this trinomial is the 6, and that's not 1, so that's greater than 1. So we're going to go ahead and use the AC method to factor this trinomial. And we have a procedure of how to do that. So here's the procedure of how to factor a trinomial when a is not 1. Okay, so first thing you have to do is find the product of a times c. So your a is 6, okay, b is 1, and then c is negative 12. So we're going to take 6 times negative 12. And that's going to be your a times c. And then when we multiply those two numbers, we get negative 72. Okay, and then we're going to put it over here. Okay, so that's step 1. Now step 2 is to find the factors of AC, okay, whose sum is b. So we have to come up with two numbers that when we multiply those two numbers, it comes out to negative 72. But when we add those two numbers, it comes out to b, and then b is 1, okay? So let's see if we can quickly come up with those two numbers. How about we try negative 8 and then a positive 9. Let's see if this works out. So we have negative 8 times 9 is negative 72. And then we take negative 8 plus 9. Well, we'll get a positive 1. And yeah, that works out. Positive 1. And that's what we're looking for. Plus 9. And then step 3 is to rewrite the trinomial as a polynomial with 4 terms using factors of AC. So what we're going to do here is we're going to change. Okay, we're going to rewrite this into 4 terms. So how do we do that? We're going to take out the middle term. And we're going to replace the middle term with the two numbers we came up. Okay, so it's going to look like this. 6x squared. Okay, and then we got negative 8x as one of the factor. And then plus 9x as the other factor. Okay, and then we're going to bring down the negative 12. Alright, so what we did is we replaced negative 8x and 9x in terms of 1x. Okay, because it doesn't change anything. When you take negative x plus 9x, you have 1x, so it doesn't change. All we did is we rewrote it in a different way. Okay, so what we're going to do is, and it doesn't matter the order you put this in, right? You can go positive 9x plus negative 8x, so still end up with the same two factors at the end. Alright, so that's step 3. Step 4 is to factor the polynomial by grouping. So we have to factor this by grouping. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it up into 2 groups. So this one right here is going to be your first group. And then here is your other group. Okay, so those are the 2 groups. Now per group, you have to factor by taking out greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor between the greatest common factor between 6x squared minus 8x is going to be 2x. So we're going to pull out 2x. And then 2x times what is 6x squared? Well, that's 2x times 3x. And then 2x times what is negative 8x? So that's going to be negative 4. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing with 9x minus 12. What is the greatest common factor for 9x and negative 12? Well, that's going to be 3, so we're going to pull a 3 out. 3 times what is 9x, so that's 3 times 3x. 3 times what is negative 12? That's negative 4. And as you can see, the polynomial, as you can see, you got common factor here. You got the 3x minus 4 here, and you have the 3x minus 4. So that is going to be your common factors. So when we factor this, this is a positive 3. So when we factor this, we're going to pull out the 3x minus 4. Okay. And then when you pull out the 3x minus 4, you're left with 2x. So you're left with 2x. And then you get the positive 3, plus 3. Okay, so 2x plus 3. There's the 3. Alright, so that's it. Now you can always check this. Okay, you check it by multiplying these polynomials, these two. If you multiply these two polynomials, you're going to get, if it's right, you're going to get the 6x squared plus 1x minus 12. We are going to look at one more. This would be the last one. Let's take a look at 15x squared minus 18x minus 24. Wow, there's some really big numbers here. Okay, so you got 15 is your A, negative 18 is your B, and then negative 24 is your C. Again, we have a trinomial. Okay, now if you look at these numbers, 15, negative 18, negative 24, there is a common factor. Now you can pull it out to make this a little bit easier to try to factor using the AC method. Okay, so think about this, 15, negative 18, and 24. What would be the biggest number that can go into those three numbers? And that's going to be your greatest common factor. Looks like you can pull out a 3, so 3 is your greatest common factor. So if you pull a 3 out, 3 times what is 15x squared? Well, that's 3 times 5x squared. 3 times what is negative 18x? Well, that's 6x. And then 3 times what number is negative 24? And that's going to be 8. So now here, you still have a trinomial that your leading coefficient is not 1, but it's a lot easier to try to factor this than the one up here. So we're going to factor this using the AC method, and we have a procedure of how to do that. And here's your procedure. So first thing we have to do is find the products of A and C. Find A times C. So A times C. A is 5. So we're going to take 5 times negative 8. Okay, so A times C, 5 times negative 8 is negative 40. So that's step number 1, and that's the numbers that we're going to work with. Step 2 is to find the factors of AC whose sum is B, meaning two numbers that multiply to get negative 40, but when you add those two numbers, okay, comes out to negative 6. So your B here is negative 6. Okay, that's your B. Okay, now we can go through a big process here, but I mean, it's negative 40. It's pretty easy to come up with the two numbers. How about we try 10 and 4? Okay, so now 10 times 4 is positive 40. So one of these has to be a negative number. Since we need it to be negative 6, okay, it makes sense to have it as negative 10 instead of positive 10. So when we add these two numbers, okay, negative 10 plus 4 is negative 6. Okay, and that's what we're looking for. So these are the two numbers, the two factors of negative 40. When you add them, comes out to negative 6. So that's step 2. Okay, so step 3, move on to step 3, is to rewrite the trinomial as a polynomial with 4 terms using factors of AC. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out the negative 6x. Okay, and then we're going to replace that with negative 10x plus 4x. So what we're going to have is we have 5x squared minus 10x plus 4x and then minus 8. Okay, so we went from 3 terms to 4 terms. Okay, so therefore we can, with the 4 terms, we can use grouping method to try to factor the polynomial. Okay, so we got the first 2 terms as one group, and then the last 2 terms as another group. So we're going to factor each group. So the first group, we can factor the first group by taking out the greatest common factor, and that's going to be 5x. Okay, so 5 times what give us 5x squared, or 5 times x, and 5 times what give us negative 10x, so that's negative 2. And then over here with the last 2 terms, we can take out 4, we take out positive 4. And when you take out positive 4, you're left with x minus 2. Okay, so if you look at these two, if you look at the polynomial, you can see that you have common factor. You get the x minus 2 for this term, and then the x minus 2 for this term. And that's your common factor. So you can factor this by taking out that common factor, x minus 2. And then when you take out x minus 2, you're left with 5x. And then you're left with positive 4. So that's going to be 5x plus 4. Okay. And you can check this. So you have to check this. What happened if you were to multiply these two binomials? Well, if those are right, then when you multiply those two binomials, you get back the original expression, which is the 15x squared minus 18x minus 24. Also, I forgot to list the other factor, which was the greatest common factor that we pulled out. Okay, that has to go with the other 2 factor. Okay, so these are the 3 factors. Okay, so to check this, if we multiply all these 3 factors, I mean, if it's right, we get back we get the original expression.